And we will start recording as well here in just a second. It's time for Clubhouse Chatter. Here's Norm Ordez and Tony Torcato.
That's right. Sitting in studio with us today is former Giants number one and all-around nice guy, Tony Torcato. Tony, how's it going, man?
Good. How you guys doing?
Doing pretty good.
Good to see you guys again. Always love coming to Clubhouse Chatter.
Yeah, and so our first guest today, and I am wearing baseball-isms. They have a new hat out honoring Jackie Robinson with the number 42, and they were kind enough to send me one. And so we have with us the one and only Carl Erskine. Mr. Erskine, how you doing today?
Hey there. Thank you, fellas. I'm doing fine. Indiana's a little cool right now. We're having our winter time. We've had snow and lots of wind, and so we expect it, and we're getting it right now.
How much snow you guys got?
Pardon me?
How much snow do you guys have?
Well, we had about 4.5, 5 inches, but the last couple days, the midday temperatures warmed up enough. Some of us melted, but we still have piles of it around to remind us that it's still wintertime.
Right. So the last time we left off, we talked about Jackie Robinson, and I wanted to chat with you about Duke Snider. And so we'll chat a little bit about Duke today, and then I'm going to ask you, so right off the bat, I was reading an article about how you developed your curveball. And it is a fascinating story, and you developed it in 1947, and it was in Cuba.
That's true. Yeah, I had an interesting thing happen. I'd like to remind everybody, if you need to thank somebody, be sure you do it before it's too late. There was a manager for a minor league team named Jack Honslow. He later managed the White Sox, but he managed at Waterloo, Iowa, in the 3I League, which was my first year. I was in Danville. The Danville Dodgers was in this Class B league in those days. But Jack Honslow, at the end of the season, he's the opposing manager now. He stops me at the end of a ball game. At the end of the season, he said, "Son, I want to talk to you a minute." And I said, "Sure." Now, for the opposing manager to talk to you is a little unusual, but he said, "Did you wonder why we hit some of your good pitches?" I said, "Well, you had some good hitting. Came down from higher levels, and Waterloo had a good hitting team." And he said, "Yeah, but we were calling all your pitches. We called all your pitches. We knew what was coming. You still beat us, but the reason we hit some shots off of you is my hitters knew every pitch what you were going to throw, and here's what you were doing to give away your pitches." And he showed me what flaw I had in my hiding the ball in my glove and turning my wrist. And he said, "You're probably going to go up to AA, and when you get up to AA, this will give you a real problem. So you need to work on changing how you hide the ball and how you grip the ball." Well, but after that, Mr. Rickey, Branch Rickey, wanted me to go to Cuba and play in the Winter League. And while I was down there, I didn't have anybody to instruct me, but I knew the Dodgers' technique of throwing a four-seam curveball. It was a four-seam fastball and a four-seam curveball. And so I started working on that. And during the time I was pitching lots of innings in this Winter League in Havana. And there I began to develop a better curveball. And also, now, if you ever snap your finger, you know you snap it with the second finger. You can't snap with your first finger. I was throwing my curveball off my first finger. But changing to throwing off the second finger, which is what the Dodgers recommended, it gives you more rotation. And so I kept working on that. And when I went back to spring training after pitching 4.5 months in Havana, the coaches saw me pitching in an inter-squad game, and they all ran at me and said, "Where did you get that curve? You didn't have that last year." I said, "Yeah, I worked on it all winter." Now, my point is I never I never thanked Jack Onslow. He went on to manage in the American League. I came up with the Dodgers that same year, my second season. I made that leap over 200 pitchers in the Dodger team in a season and a half. And by that season, I went from Havana to spring training. I went to Double-A at Fort Worth, Texas. In the middle of that season, I went to the Dodgers. Yeah, that was a leap for me. But it was all... It was on the basis that I'd learned that curveball, and it was so good. And then, of course, it helped me pitch 12 seasons in the big leagues. And it was my strikeout pitch, except the guy started looking for it, and he threw the fastball by him. But that curveball that I was able to develop on my own in Havana was a difference in me making the big leagues in just less than 2 years. And but all those years, I was a young guy. I never thought about picking up the phone and calling Jack Onslow and saying, Jack, you did me one of the great favors of my baseball career. Now, Jack Onslow passed away before I ever had a chance then to call and thank him. I hope somehow he knows I'm grateful to him for how taking a kid on another team he had no interest in whatsoever, but he saw this flaw and he told me about it and he helped me overcome it. And anyway, that my curveball was kind of my signature pitch.
So what was it like back then playing in Cuba? I mean, you got the winter leagues of today, so we don't have players that go to Cuba to play in the winter league. So we got Venezuela, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and Mexico. But what was it like playing in Cuba?
Well, it was not unusual at all in those years for players to play in the Winter League. Maybe it was Caracas, Venezuela, Mexico, or Havana. There was a lot of winter baseball played, and a lot of minor league players played in the off season. I can name you a lot. Well, Lasorda was one guy that pitched a lot in the winter leagues, and Campanella played in the winter leagues. So it wasn't unusual. Then also, because the reserve clause in baseball, which was finally declared illegal, I guess, because if you signed with a team in my era, that team owned you forever. You never had any options. The team that signed you had all the control. They could trade or sell you or release you, but you yourself had no right. In fact, there's rules against you talking to any other club while you were owned by the original club. So some guys trying to break that went to court, and the court would not break it. So they started to jump to some of these places like Havana and Mexico City or Venezuela to play in their leagues. And just so they got barred from American baseball because they jumped their contracts. And there's a whole history behind guys that jumped to the winter leagues, to the Latin countries, Mexico, Cuba, to play baseball where they were unhappy with the reserve clause that kept them tied to one team forever. Well, until free agency happened in the 70s, I think. Now players can get free, and there's lots of free agents today that can take the best bid for their services. But in our day, we were tied to the same team. So these winter leagues were a place for a lot of guys that jumped to play in those leagues to just break their bonds with American baseball. And of course, that's all changed now, and free agency is here, and players now can go to the highest bidder.
Right. So Duke Snider. So let's chat a little bit about Duke Snider. It's
The great.
definitely. I think he is worthy of the Hall of Fame. And, of course, I didn't play with him, but you did. And what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yeah. I not only played with Duke, I roomed with Duke for 10 or 11 seasons. We were close as brothers. We really were very close personally, and it lasted all the rest of our lives. Duke passed away a couple of years ago, but we were extremely close. We were very young. We both made the Dodgers at age 21. We didn't room together the first year, but after a year or two, we finally began to room together. And so Duke and I were good buddies, close friends, and our wives still exchanged recipes. And so we were brothers without the blood. But Duke was one of those gifted young players that the Dodgers had signed. He had a tremendous amount of ability. He could field, throw, run. And DiMaggio always stood out because he had this graceful mannerisms about how he walked to the plate, how he would stride around the bases. It was his trademark. Well, Duke Snider had a classic gait around the bases, charting to the outfield. He just looked Hall of Fame from day one. He had trouble with the strike zone. He couldn't lay off the high strike. And so hard-throwing pitchers like Yankees had a couple, Allie Reynolds, Vic Raschi. They'd throw Duke high fastballs, strike him out one time after another. But we had a hitting instructor named George Sisler. We all know Ted Williams at one time hit 400. But before that, George Sisler had hit 400. And he was a hitting instructor. And he got to working with Duke about the high strike. And not only did Duke learn to lay off of the high strike, but some high strikes he learned to hit. And so it made him the complete ball player. When you finally he can pick and choose those high pitches, and he laid off the ones he couldn't hit. But there were a certain level of high pitch, and Duke could drive it big time. So I watched him go through those frustrating years of striking out a lot, and Duke used to get very discouraged. But he and I were good for each other in the room. I had a little arm trouble, and Duke was very encouraging for me, and so we were good for each other. And Duke played great when I pitched. He made some great catches, got some big hits, and and he was a good. Duke was had a good lifestyle. He didn't dissipate. He'd drink a beer once in a while, but basically he went to bed on time. He didn't mess around. We had a good room on the road, and so he helped my career. I hope I helped him.
And so, with that said, is he a Hall of Famer? I mean, in your eyes,
oh, yeah.
I mean, numbers wise, he's kind of borderline, but I think Duke was the best at his position for a while.
Now, Duke's in the Hall of Fame, but the New York three teams at that time had the Giants in New York in the National League, along with the Dodgers, and then the Yankees, of course, were in the American League. So three major league teams in one city. It was a very unique era. And they always compared players. Well, here's Duke in center field. He's being compared against DiMaggio and then Mays, and then later Mantle, who eventually replaced DiMaggio. Those are four of the greatest center fielders ever to play the game. And Duke always got overshadowed by the Yankee powerhouses, DiMaggio and Mantle. And then Mays, who came in the league in 51, I believe, he became such a standout superstar in the Polo Grounds. Both the Polo Grounds and the Yankee Stadium had huge outfields.
Right.
So a center fielder could run forever and catch a drive. Ebbets Field was a very small bandbox. There wasn't any room to run very far in the outfield. So Duke didn't get the reputation of making these fabulous catches. But I played with him 12 seasons. Believe me, he made catches that you can't describe. He was an outstanding fielder, and had a good throwing arm. So as time passed, Duke began to be recognized. Finally, when he was inducted in the Hall of Fame, he is now has stature right up there with DiMaggio, Mantle, and Mays, the four great center fielders in that era. I got to see them all, play with them, and play against them. But Duke takes his place now, right there. His stats are as good, but his sensational play was so outstanding. They didn't film anything in our days, so only the World Series and the All-Star Game they'd show highlights. But now they film everything,
right.
But there's so many great plays that never were recorded. And Duke made one in Philadelphia that no one who saw it, especially the Phillies claimed he had a second ball in his glove, or he could have never caught the one that he did catch, because Robin Roberts of the Phillies says, no way, he cheated somewhere. We don't know what he did, but some way he cheated. He couldn't have caught the ball, but he did catch it. And Steve O'Neill was the manager of the Phillies, and when Duke made this catch in left center field to save a win for us, Steve O'Neill wouldn't leave the field. He's screwing at the umpires. As, somebody did something wrong here. There's no way that ball was caught. It was an outstanding catch, but it wasn't filmed. So Mays caught a ball in the World Series that happened to be filmed, and it was Vic Wertz hit a fly ball deep in Polo Ground, and Willie ran his back to home plate and caught it over his shoulder. Well, they re-showed that over and over and over again as the greatest catch. That was not Willie. I saw Willie make 3 or 4 catches better than that one, but they never got filmed. So it's too bad that Duke Snider's some of his catches couldn't have been filmed, because he finally got the credit. He used to be kind of second fiddle to Mantle and Mays, but Duke had some great home run series, but he's now. They wrote a song, Mickey, Willie, and the Duke. Yep. He's now in the annals of baseball, right up there with the best.
And that song is Talking Baseball. And so what I want to know is, what was it like back then when the Yankees, the Dodgers, and the Giants were all in New York? Now, you guys would play against the Giants, but you never played against the Yankees because there was no interleague play at that time.
Well, of course, we played the Yankees in 5 different World Series eventually.
Right.
With the Giants, it's hard for people to realize when there were just 8 teams in the league, we played the 7 other teams 22 times a year, 11 at home, 11 on the road. So in New York, when we played the Giants, all 22 games were in New York. So that rivalry was fierce. And the rivalry with the Yankees was tough, but it was different. We had professional hatred with each other, the Giants and the Dodgers. I don't mean the players hated each other, but professionally we did. Duke Snider had a line in his book. It says, we hated the Giants so bad. Their colors were orange and black. We hated that so bad, we don't even like Halloween. So that rivalry was unbelievable. And when you played against the Giants, your manhood was on the line. Mm-hmm. It didn't matter what the standing was in the league. Who was in first or second place, didn't matter. When you played the Giants, I mean, it was a fierce and a tense moment to face that club.
And that rivalry still exists today. I mean, it might not be as bad, but it does.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it was a good carryover to the West Coast, and there was a guy who used to sit in center field that he got on Duke big time. He was always calling Horseface, and Duke, it bothered Duke. We'd be riding home back to Brooklyn, and Pee Wee and Reese would be in the car, and Walker, and me and Duke would say, "That's so and so." Every pitch I hear a Horseface. I said, "I'm getting sick of this guy." But when we moved from Brooklyn to Los Angeles in 1958, the first game was played in Seal Stadium in San Francisco. And Duke and I rode out on the bus together. And when we stepped off the bus at the Seal Stadium, their barriers were holding the crowd back. But standing first in line at the side of the bus was this guy from New York. And as soon as Duke stepped off the bus, this guy says, "Hey, horseface, thought you got rid of me, didn't you?" This guy came all the way to California for opening day, and Duke said, I couldn't help laughing. This guy was all the way from New York, but that rivalry did transfer somewhat, but it was not as intense. In Brooklyn, when the day of you were playing the Giants, a night game, you go out to a grocery store or get your hair cut or something in Brooklyn, everybody's talking about the Giant game tonight, and it was a hard fought. They had a good team. Mays was their centerpiece, but Magley, one of their pitchers, was tough for us, and Larry Jansen. They had some Alvin Dark. They had some good ball players. But that rivalry, it transferred, but being in two different cities is not nearly like it was in New York.
Right. And you had talked a little bit about last time or the time before. We've had you on the show a few times, which is pretty awesome, because we always get a history lesson. And that is one of the reasons why I love having you on, is because we're able to take a look back in 1947. You know, Tony here drafted in 90, 97, 98. You know, and so, you know. But you had talked about the rivalry, and when you had retired from Major League Baseball and went back home and started coaching at the university, and you had told me about the colors of the uniforms hanging in the lockers.
Yeah, well,
and why don't you go ahead and retell that story?
Yeah, I was 32 when I retired with some arm trouble. I'd like to pitch longer, but I couldn't do it, so I had to retire. So I came back to my hometown, Anderson, Indiana, and I had four small kids, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know what kind of job I could do. And so I did enroll in the university, Anderson University, and a small college here in my hometown. And so while I was taking some accounting classes and English, a few things to help me, I wasn't looking for a degree. I was just trying to get my head on straight. They came and asked me if I had coached for 1 year while I searched for a permanent coach, if I would be the interim coach for 1 year. And I said, gee whiz, I don't think I can do that. I got to make a living. Because this was not a paid job. This was sort of a volunteer job at the university. But I had all this baseball in my head and nothing really to use it. It was too bad. So I thought, well, I ought to do that. So I did it 1 year, then 2 years, and eventually 12 seasons. I was an off-campus coach, but we did win 4 championships, and in 1965 our team went to the College World Series. So we did have some good teams. But the day I went over to the gym, and I'd never seen their uniforms before, when I finally agreed to do 1 year, I went over to look at the uniforms, and I almost backed out, because the uniforms are orange and black. The mascot for the Anderson University is Ravens, the Ravens. Mm-hmm. And so the colors are orange and black. I almost had to back out, but what I did do, I took those uniforms and I stripped off a bunch of the brocade, the orange and black brocade. I actually physically took it off of the uniforms.
So we've chatted about Duke, the baseball player, and let's close with this. Tell us about Duke the man, Duke Snider the man. I want to know what kind of man was Duke, and you kind of led into it a little bit with being him on the road. He had a beer every once in a while. But what kind of man was Duke?
Well, I'll tell you, number one, Duke married his high school sweetheart, same as I did. And our kids were kind of born simultaneously as time passed. Our kids were young. As we were rooming together, our wives got to be close friends, and our kids played together. Duke was a good family man. He took care of his family. He was faithful to his wife. He was a man of good character. Duke was not a rabble rouser. He was serious about his job in baseball. He was Duke was a managing material. He eventually did manage in the minor leagues eventually, but he knew the game. He was a good student of the game, and he was just a good lifestyle. He was never in trouble. I don't recall Duke ever getting thrown out of a game.
Wow.
He might have somewhere along the line, but he was not a troublemaker of any kind. In the clubhouse, Duke was very congenial. He, in his early years, management used to chide Duke, and it felt like he could do better, even though he did well. They'd say, "Now, Duke, yeah, you had a good day, but you're better than that. You can do it." So they were never satisfied with Duke, and it used to bother him. He was a young guy, and so he had to mature a little bit. He gives Pee Wee Reese credit for helping him to mature as a professional player. And Pee Wee was our captain. Now, he was not a holler guy. He was not he didn't use a lot of vulgar language. He didn't cuss a lot, didn't scream, yell at guys. He had a very good leadership way of helping guys who needed to be criticized or needed to get good instruction. And Pee Wee could do that. Well, Duke gives Pee Wee 100% credit for helping him mature as a major league player. And when Pee Wee passed away some years ago now, I was at the funeral in Louisville with Duke and several of the players. Koufax was there, Lasorda. Anyway, we went to the funeral, and they interviewed all of us naturally. And Duke made a statement. He said, Pee Wee Reese was the greatest Dodger of them all.
Wow.
That's how much esteem that Pee Wee, putting his good wisdom to work in Duke. That's how impressed Duke was. He knew that he was a little stubborn in the early years of taking instruction. He kind of resented being told what to do, and Pee Wee straightened him out. And so I watched that happen, and I know that Duke, when he said that, Pee Wee was the greatest Dodger of them all. He knew that his Hall of Fame status himself, Duke, got in the Hall of Fame, that Pee Wee had something to do with it.
Wow.
Well, anyway, your question about Duke, if you want to pick a player with good morals, good habits, good lifestyle, and great talent, you could pick Duke Snider.
And that's saying a lot. That is saying a lot. So once again, Mr. Carl Erskine. Carl, hey, let's do this again. I know we usually get you on right around Jackie's birthday, Jackie Robinson Day, and we always love chatting with you, and we look forward to doing it again.
Well, you guys, of course, keep me alive, baseball-wise. I have been a long time since I've thrown a pitch, but recalling those days and discussing the career of the past and some of the great players, it's always an honor for you to ask me, and I'll be happy to join you again sometime.
Well, I also want to add that Carl, so I belong to a Facebook page of baseball autographs, and Carl actually, he signs a lot. And so you get a lot of him and Bobby Dewar down in Junction City are like two of the older guys that sign. Well, actually will sign, and he doesn't charge. They don't charge, and people get all excited when they get an Oisk autograph or a Bobby Dewar autograph, and for the dork side of me, the baseball card collector, thank you for that, and it really means a lot.
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't try to grandstand with that. I respect the fans. Players come and go, but the fan base for baseball is solid. It stays there. You got to respect the fans. If I could do it, I'd tell the young players, here's some things you need to do. Number one, respect the fans. Number two, answer your mail. Number three, write your autograph so it can be read. Number four, make sure that you put something back in the game that you take so much out of. And just just simple things. It doesn't cost you a lot of money. But I think players owe it to the fans not to charge for autographs. You ought to give them the autographs. You don't need to charge a fan for an autograph. Why would you do that? They're the ones that made you what you are.
Yep.
And so if a guy wants me to sign, some players, a few players I know, they hold out signing to make their autograph worth more.
Yep.
That is terrible. That's an insult to the fans. And now I get paid to go to a card show. I don't mind a promoter inviting me to come to a card show and paying me a fee for making an appearance. But he charges for the autographs. I don't.
Right.
If a guy wants me to sign 3, I'll sign 3. I don't care. If the fan wants it, I'm okay. Now, if I get a piece of mail, I get quite a bit of mail because I answer my mail, so,
yes,
so I
you
get
do.
more mail. But if I get a guy who sends me 10 of the same picture and he wants me to sign them, what am I going to think? This guy's going to sell these. Who would want 10 of the same picture signed?
Right.
That's not a hobby collector. That's a guy that wants to sign. So I got a rule. I'll sign 3 of them and send them back. But I don't restrict my signing because I'm honored to be asked to sign. And young guys write to me who never saw me play before at all. But they've read about the Dodgers and so forth. Then I get guys writing me from prison. A lot of guys might write me from prison. I get letters from overseas, guys in the service overseas, guys that are maybe somebody whose father saw me pitch, who's now elderly, and they got to write and say, my dad, for the birthday, I'd love to give my dad. He watched you pitch. Now, you can't throw those letters away. You got to answer them, and I do answer them. And if I ever miss a fan's letter, I'm sorry, because I try to catch them all.
Well, I know when new collectors come online onto this Facebook page. In fact, we had one today come on, and they were asking, I want to get like some of the older players, and your name, Bobby Dewar, you guys are always like one of the first ones listed, and it's because of the fact that number one, you do sign. And when you do sign, it's a pretty signature. It's nice and legit, and it means a lot to us collectors. I know I've got a couple of them autographed, put away, and it's, for me, it's kind of like a business card. My autographs aren't for sale. I've got, Tony Torquato's autograph, and it's like a business card. Okay, I've hung out with him. I've, had, Mr. Carl Erskine on the show a couple of different times. Those signed cards, when I go through them, they tell a story. There's a story with every single one of them. And, like I said, it's like a business card for me.
Yeah. Well, I don't make a big case out of it, but I do respect the fans, and I know guys can take advantage of you sometimes.
Absolutely.
Some guy's actually a collector, and he sends and wants stuff signed, but I think most people are honest enough. And
I think so too.
One time, Sports Collectors Digest interviewed me, and they said, "Do you charge for autographs?" I said, "No." They said, "Well, what do you do?" I said, "Well, I don't charge. The only thing I do is somebody wants to send me a donation, I give it to Special Olympics."
Yep.
And so now I'll say about every 10 letters I get, 2 or 3 of them will have money in them for Special Olympics. So I don't charge, but guys who call and volunteer, I do a stat baseball. Now, a stat baseball probably sells on the internet for $150, I expect. I'm not sure. But the guys will send me and ask for a stat baseball. I don't charge them. I should, because it takes a while to put a lot of stats on a baseball. But if a guy asks me, so voluntarily, most guys who send me a baseball will send me $20 or 10 or $20. And they just volunteer to do it. That's okay. And when I get money like that, I put it in a pot for Special Olympics. Mm-hmm. So, but I would encourage players to answer their mail and write their name that you can read it. be proud of it, and not like it's a chore that I hate to do it, but I'll do it. And here's a half signature, but that's just me.
But like I said, once again, as a collector, thank you. Thank you for signing and doing that. And like I said, let's do this again. We got Jackie Robinson Day coming around the corner, and another Major League Baseball season is upon us. And let's get you on again.
Well, I'll be here. I hope I'll be here.
We hope so too.
Keep in touch.
Definitely. Once again, Mr. Carl Erskine, thank you very much.
Thanks, Carl.
You bet. Good night. Bye-bye.
Good night. All right. So I don't know about you, Tony, and I know you sign for free.
Well, I'll sign for free. My stuff's not worth anything anyway.
Well, that's not true, because we're looking at a baseball for like $57. I mean,
yeah,
on
it's probably
eBay.
one of my freaking family members selling the stuff on
Probably.
eBay. Scam artists.
But no, I agree. Early on, I mean, we're the ones as a fan.
Yeah. Oh, I'll sign all day.
We're the ones in the end that make you.
I've sent cards.
I've probably sent Carl like probably 10 cards on a couple different occasions, and each time, I mean, within 10 days, I get them back. And so I've always gotten like a little flyer about Special Olympics that talks about his story, because he has a son that's Down syndrome, and it talks about his story, and so, yeah. And so, heck yeah, I'll share with people all day long. Brian, I'll have to share with you his address. And so, but yeah, he's a great signer, all around great guy, and it's a history lesson. It's a baseball history lesson every time we have it.
Oh yeah, but yeah, like he said though, when a guy's you got 10 different cards. He said the 10. I got stuff in the mail where there's like 10 different of these little cards,
and then they send you index cards.
Yeah, they're index cards.
Yeah.
But there's like 20 of them.
Yeah,
You're like,
no.
Okay, are you gonna like forge my autograph or something?
See, that's where I'd
my
sign
name?
like Tony Torquato.
Really? If they send those?
Then it'd be like, screw you.
Yeah.
And then it'd be like, go to hell.
But if they send those, I seriously I'd rip them up.
They sell them on. It's crazy because I don't do index cards.
Yeah,
I just do baseball
like
cards.
Those things.
I just do baseball cards. If I don't have a baseball card of a guy, I don't get his signature.
The index cards, those are the ones.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, let's see. What are you trying to do here?
But I know of people who do that.
I know people who do that.
And so, I know that they make their little baseball cards, and it's got like a outline of a baseball with an area for a signature. I don't do those either.
Baseball cards.
So, yeah.
But I'm guilty of signing those index cards early on.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Because you don't know.
Some guys were like, oh, don't sign those.
All right. So the great Mr. Tony Torquato. I'm Norm. That's Brian.
It's good seeing you guys again.
We are going to come back with you, and we're going to talk about Salem Kaiser's got a banquet coming up.
Yeah.
And then at 6:15, we've got a pretty good one. We've got Chef Ben Ford, who is Harrison Ford's son, and
you talk about food. I'm gonna be hungry by the time we leave here.
Played at baseball at USC. I know. We're going to talk barbecue because Brian's into barbecuing. So, hey, check us out. We are sponsored by Baseballisms. If you like the hat I'm wearing, pick it up at baseballisms.com. Check out the guys. They got some great stuff. We stream live. Brian threw me curveball. BaseballDudes.com. There was a Yamhill today down there, so I thought I'd go to that. Baseball Dudes, Chris Gazelle up there in Vancouver, Washington. Also by Skipper. Mitch Canham of the Clinton Lumber Kings, based by pros up there in Washington as well. And his dad Mark, does our shirts for Clubhouse Chatter. And if you're interested in a shirt or a hoodie, let me know and we'll hook you up. And so we stream live every week at yamhilltoday.com.
The great Norm
The great. I'm just Norm, I'm just Norm. I just do what I do, man.
I love Clubhouse Chatter.
I just, I'm glad to hear that because...
But what I like coming out here, right? So it's in the middle of nowhere. It's awesome. It's like nobody can find this place.
We are up in
we're in the boondocks.
And you should hear some of the conversations that Brian and I have out here when the mics are off about various shows. it gets pretty hilarious because you've heard of Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell and all that, and so we've actually talked about doing a few things that go bump in the night, so yeah, you never know.
There's only one guy that find this place with no address.
That's right. Yes, that is pretty tough. Hey, so we'll come back here in a few minutes and we'll chat a little bit more with
Chuck Norris was the only guy that will find this address.
I think Sasquatch.
No directions.
Yeah, but Sasquatch is not a guy though. So hey, we'll be back.
That's right.